Welcome. This is an actual play of a role-playing game. All the participants are adults. The content is intended for adult viewers. We strive to keep the content PG to PG-13, but it is a horror story and may contain horror themes. Viewer discretion is advised. Enjoy.
Well, howdy, friends and floorheads. Happy Sunday. We decided we needed to complete the Brian trilogy. So Brian has run for us Delta Green. Brian has also run for us Call of Cthulhu. So we got to bring in the third one, which is Trail of Cthulhu. This is going to be Internalize, which is a long-running campaign. I'm excited to be a player in this and Brian to run it. You see some familiar faces, two new faces, though. Chris, give us a wave. Chris has been a fan and a patron for a long time, and it was great that he decided to come play. And then we've got a bit of a celebrity. We've got Mac, who has also been a follower and a patron for a long time. Most importantly, though, Mac is really become kind of the resident artist at the Discord on Third Floor Wars. She shares her art all the time, and you can see the art. She did all of the characters for the game today. So I'm really excited to play. Brian, this is your show, though.
Yeah, now that you've got me going there, I feel like I'm typecast with the whole Cthulhu thing. I have to start running something else in all of my spare time. But yeah, welcome. I'm glad everybody can join us here, and we're going to pick up with the sort of traditional cinematic fade out of the credit scene, and we see a shot of Grand Central Terminal in New York. It's around sunset. The lights are shining in from the windows of the big arrivals room. Little text goes across the bottom: 7:49 p.m. Monday, June 24th, 1935. And we focus on a young man in a gray chauffeur's uniform. He's sitting at a lunch counter, just kind of sipping a cup of coffee. And we hear, over the loudspeaker, "Now arriving on track 7, the Forest City from Chicago by way of Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Schenectady, and Albany. Arriving on track 7. And when he hears that, he kind of drinks the last of his coffee. He puts down a nickel and a dime and says, "Keep the change." And the guy behind the counter nods. And he moves over to wait at the main concourse entrance. He's got a luggage cart with him, and he picks up a little slate, a little piece of chalk, which has 4 names chalked on it: Accardo, Burton, Fisher, and Ross Cavell. And he just sort of stands there at the top of the entrance gallery and waits to see who arrives first. Who arrives first? Who do we see coming up?
So I think you see a tall man coming down the steps. I've got a very smart suit on that is trying to look more expensive than it really is, but well kept. Of course, I've got a fedora on, kind of a sandy blondish hair, sharp features, traditionally handsome, but not a pleasant expression ever on my face. I've got resting angry man face. And so as I come down the steps, I think I notice our chauffeur. I see the slate. I come up and go, "Do you need ID?"
No, sir. I don't think that's necessary. Are you your name, sir?
Jason Burton. How do you know I'm Jason Burton? Just by trusting me?
He seems somewhat befuddled by the question. He says, "Well, I don't imagine anyone else would have any particular reason to go on this trip. But if you'd like to show me your ID, I'd be happy to see it, sir.
I think that'd be smart. So I reach into my wallet and show him my ID.
Okay.
And
He looks at it carefully and nods and says, "Thank you."
and these other three, I didn't realize that this was going to be a group effort.
That's right. So they should all be on the same train. So I imagine they'll be along presently. I can take your luggage here if you'd like. There's a coffee counter over there if you'd like to grab something and wait. It should only be a few minutes.
So I've got a kind of a large, like duffel style leather bowling bag that I set on the counter and just give him a bit of a nod and head over to the coffee counter.
Okay. While you're picking up your coffee, who is next to arrive?
I think you see a sturdy, taller woman step down from the train in a dark, sensible, long blue dress, blue cape, and a blue hat. You'd be expecting her to carry a small valise or something, but she's actually got a dark army green knapsack slung over her shoulder. Sensible walking, well, no, kind of boots. And she looks around the station, immediately notices the chauffeur and the little sign, and walks up to him and says, "So you're here to pick us up?"
That's right, ma'am. And you would be Ms.
Alice Ross-Cabell.
Very good. You can put your bag here if you like. We're still waiting for another couple of folks. If you want to grab a coffee or something at the counter, feel free. It should only be a few minutes.
That's fine. I'll wait here. And
Very
she'll step to the side and just look around.
Okay. And among the crowds that are moving through, it's a little past the big rush hour, so the crowds are starting to thin out. But this is still a very busy station. And the next one to be coming in from the arrival section is
Sal, mid-30s, a male, nicely built. He's athletic build. Rises from the coffee area, slaps down payment, and walks over. Actually, grabs a bag and then walks over. He's got dark hair, dark eyes, kind of a widow's peak, and he's got a smile on his face all times.
excellent. The anti-James.
Yes. He says, "Hey, that's me.
Very good, sir. Yeah, I'm sorry. Your name.
I'm Sal. Sal Cardo."
Very good. Yes, sir. If you want to put your bag here, there's just one more we're waiting for here, and
I'll hold it. So thank you.
of course. And then the last to arrive.
You kind of see this slender person. They have a bit more of delicate features, kind of like a silent film actor. They have the sides of the hair are dark black, but then the top is white, like they have a shock of white hair. And even though it's the middle of summer, probably the hottest it could get, they're wearing a lot of bulky clothing. They have a nice suit on, but then they also have like a jacket on, like a nice overcoat, and they are carrying a black briefcase and an umbrella as they approach.
Okay. And the young man looks up and says, you must be Dr. Fisher?
Correct. It's good to meet you.
Excellent. Very good. Well, I think everyone's here. If you'd like to put your bag on, I can get everyone to the car and we can be on our way. He sort of looks over to find James at the counter.
And you see me there. You see I have a notepad writing, scribbling in pencil, and I kind of, as I'm watching all of the action happening around the chauffeur, and you see me close it, put it into my suit coat, and then head over.
Okay.
And while you said we're ready to get in, Alice already walks to the passenger door to sit up front.
Okay. She is claiming shotgun. Got it. Yeah. So he, he takes you all out to one of the parking areas where there is a fairly nice looking limousine. for those who are interested in such things, it's a Packard Super 8. He basically, there's a little space in the back to put the luggage. He probably has to strap something up onto the roof, but it's pretty secure and he gets it up there. He looks momentarily, I guess, nonplussed for a second when you go to the passenger side door, but he, the customer is always right. He opens the door and holds it for you and helps everybody in. And he starts making his way down Park Avenue. He says it'll be probably an hour with traffic until we get where we're going. So let me know if you need anything along the way. And he just kind of focuses on the driving. Is there any kind of conversation as we go? Is it just an awkward silence?
Definitely
think
silence
Alice
from.
would-
Oh, go ahead, Alice.
Oh, Sal won't be silent. He will start with, trying to get information. Okay, who are you guys? What you doing here? Nice weather we're having. Just talking about absolutely nothing at all. But sounding very, very happy about it.
Okay. Alice will kind of turn around, look over through the space between the two front seats and look at the three people in the back and say, well, nice to meet you all. I'm Alice.
Good to meet you, Alice.
And,
I'm Sal.
Nice to meet you, Sal.
Your neck's going to get sore if you ride like that the entire way. Just saying.
Yeah, but I prefer to sit up front.
Okay.
James
And,
gives you a nod, doesn't say anything, Alice.
Okay. And then Alice will look towards the third passenger.
I'm Dr. Adrian Fisher, but Adrian's fine by me.
A doctor? Medical doctor or other doctor?
Oh, not one that many would consider having any merit. I'm a doctor of the mind. Alienist,
Mind.
some would call it.
Well,
Notepad
they're,
comes out.
Fisher has a very, from the second they clock, you kind of always have you in their periphery. Are they going to say something? No? Okay.
Gotta be one of those.
Doctor of the mind. Well, the body needs healing. The mind sometimes does as well. So,
I noticed you were carrying a knapsack. Is that a memento of anything?
well, I've been on a number of. I've been abroad a couple of times, and this is how I used to travel. So, it all fits in there.
Understood. And then Adrian goes back to silently observing with a slightly uneasy smile. Just it kind of unnerves you a bit, but it doesn't seem intentional. Just kind of.
So,
So, Sal,
Doctor of the
you're-
Mind. Is that like brain surgery or something? You operate on people's heads?
Oh no, that is a different field.
Oh,
I,
okay. Sal
I
looks
help people.
perplexed.
There are people who need help, and when they don't receive it, they act dangerously. My job is to make sure it doesn't reach that level.
So you're like a crime fighter or something?
In a sense, just a bit more unorthodox in my methods.
Works for me.
This game is going
What
to
do
be
you do,
amazing.
Sal?
This is gonna.
What do I do? Well, I'm here for my looks, of course.
Well, of course. But aside from that,
I know things. I know people. People know me.
well, now we know each other as well. So,
Absolutely. It's good to meet you.
By this time, the limousine is kind of gone over the Manhattan Bridge and is heading down into Brooklyn. Those of you familiar with the area, you're going down Flatbush Avenue, which is kind of the main drag of Brooklyn. It's not sun hasn't quite set yet, but it's starting to get dark. And eventually, you make your way up to what looks like a small airport. The signs out front label it as Floyd Bennett Field. And, you drive past the control tower and up to one of the small hangars. And it's interesting. There is, the hangar doors are open, and there is a plane in it. It's a big silver number, and there's a guy inside kind of tinkering with the engine. But the other side, where the plane isn't, has almost been converted into a little open air sitting room. There's like some bookshelves and a wooden table and some camp chairs. And sitting in one of those chairs is what looks to be a young woman, who sort of looks up as the limousine pulls up and sort of stands up, maybe a little nervous isn't quite the right word, but sort of anxious, as if somebody was about to start doing some public speaking or something, and wasn't sure they were quite ready for it. So the driver, parks the vehicle, gets out, opens the door, assists Alice out and helps the others out. Doesn't make any move to unpack the bags at this point. And the young woman in question, whom I'm hopefully going to be showing to you all now, sort of welcomes, nods and approaches as you kind of get near. She looks to Dr. Fisher and says, Dr. Fisher, thank you so much for coming. Miss Ross Cavill, it's lovely to see you again. I guess you gentlemen are Mr. Accardo and Mr. Burton. And she sort of isn't sure which is which.
I'm Sal. I think
very good. Very good. Well, thank you all for coming. Please have a seat, she says. She's got, there's a tray among the armchairs with a bottle of pretty nice brandy and some snifters on there. And she sort of, pours one for herself and sort of looks to see if anyone doesn't want any.
I politely put my hand up. I also don't sit down.
Okay.
I'll have one and sit next to her.
Okay.
Sal will have one, and he'll jump and says, I'll take his too. She can't let it go to waste.
I will politely decline the brandy, but sit down as well.
Okay.
Make that 3.
She pours one serving for you and puts the bottle near you, Sal.
Thank you very much. I like how you think.
She sort of, she looks over to James. Are you sure you wouldn't like to sit?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Very well. So she kind of takes a deep breath, and the start of the speech at least seems almost a little bit rehearsed, kind of like she was addressing a boardroom or something. But she seems like, I don't know. She seems like she's a little unsure of herself. She starts here. So, well, as some of you already know, my name is Janet Winston Rogers, and I've brought you here because I have somewhat of a mystery on my hands, and I'm hoping you can help me solve it. My father, Walter Winston, was, I guess you'd say, a driven man all of his life. He made his fortune in pharmaceuticals during and after the war. And several of you, certainly Alice, have heard of Winston Pharmaceuticals. It's a pretty large and successful company. Once the company had reached a point where it no longer needed his day-to-day oversight, he spent a few years traveling the world studying folklore, which is a thing he had always been interested in. And that led to an interest in what I suppose you'd call the occult. When my father wasn't traveling, he started having meetings at home with people he wasn't in business with. I think they were also dabblers in this sort of occult business, whatever it was. And as the years went by, he started to become more distant at home, travel even more often. Honestly, most of 1924, he was away from home. He would never answer any questions about where he was going. Once he told me he was on the trail of some bad people, as though I was a child. At any rate, in August of 1924, he finally came home, but he was not the same man. He was shaken and unsteady. He stopped traveling. He stopped having his meetings. He saw a few different psychiatrists over the course of a few years, and sort of nods to Dr. Fisher. She says that. He burned many of his books. He almost stopped eating. He was jumping at shadows. He said he was being watched. He was never the same after that. He forbade us from asking anything about what he did. He started to withdraw into himself, and he said several times that nothing mattered anymore. When my mother passed in 1932, he hardly grieved and just started to become more frustrated and paranoid. And then early this year, he finally passed away, and he was a shadow of the man I remember. And when I was trying to clean up some of his affairs, I found a set of letters from a man by the name of Douglas Henslow, who had worked with my father up until August of 24. I think he was one of the men that my father kept meeting with at the house. He wrote many times over the course of almost a decade, always asking my father to write down what had happened on that day. As far as I can tell, my father never answered, although it looks like he spent a lot of time going over these letters. The last letter from Henslow came earlier this year, just before my father died. They are all postmarked from Savannah, Georgia. And I'm hoping that this man may have some idea of what happened to my father a decade ago. I want to know what he was mixed up in. I want to know what he was hunting for. Should I be proud of what he was doing or apologize for it? Is there something unfinished? And yes, although it sounds a little ridiculous, am I in any danger from these bad people he was talking about? Am I being watched, as my father said he was? In addition to the payment that we've discussed for your services, I'll gladly lend you the use of my plane and my pilot. And at this point, the guy who's working on the engine kind of leans around and waves and goes back to whatever he was doing. He'll take you anywhere in the country that's part of the investigation. I don't really know what to tell you to expect or what we might find, but I'm hoping you can give me at least some sense of peace of mind about what may have happened to my father.
Miss Winston Rogers, I assume we can take the letters?
Yes, I have them here, and she passes them over in a manila folder.
And I'd like to open the folder and see if there is a return address.
There are, in fact, two different return addresses. Most of the letters, and I've shared some excerpts from those letters in the journals online now, most of them are from an address called 513 West Henry Street in Savannah. There are a couple near the end that are from a different address, 23 Old Hope Road, and then it goes back to the other address at the end. You would also probably notice that the ones from the Old Hope Road address are on nicer stationery. The ones from the first address are mostly fairly cheap paper, but the other ones are on kind of a nicer, rag paper and probably better pen as well.
Well,
Brian,
Janet, of course.
Go ahead.
Also, thanks for asking, and I'm happy to look into this. But I'm just wondering, why don't you travel in your own plane to Georgia to meet this man?
I have a lot going on right now between my father's death and still dealing with my late husband's affairs. There's a corporate merger going on, which I'm now inadvertently in charge of decisions on. I'm also, frankly, not entirely comfortable going off to an unknown place alone to talk to a man who may have been involved in my father's death.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather have some folks who I think are more capable. And here she nods particularly at Sal and James. In case I don't expect there to be any violence, of course, but in my position, I have to be extra careful.
Does Alice get the feeling that this is the true reason that she's?
You think? Let's see. You have some assessed honesty, do you not? You certainly do.
Yep, got 2 points.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that all of you kind of get the feeling that she's not lying to you, but also you get the sense that she's maybe a little bit nervous about what she might find, and she kind of wants to have a little bit of distance by having someone else, find it and tell her. Yeah, she seems like she's quite not uncomfortable, but a little nervous about what may be turned up here.
Okay. Well, as I said, I agreed to it up front. I'm happy to look into this. Sounds like Savannah, Georgia is going to be our first destination. You said, I'm so sorry to pry, and again, condolences with your father, but your late husband as well?
Yes, he passed in a car accident a few years ago, and so it's not the immediate problems of that, but he right before he died, he was beginning a merger with my father's company, and that still needs to be worked through, unfortunately.
Oh, well, when tall, blonde, and reasonably handsome is done with the letters, I'd like to have a look as well.
Of course.
You actually get a bit of a smirk from me for that.
Right. So you guys in the journals should see a folder called Henslow Letters. And this is not the complete letters, because there's 12 or 15 of them, but there's basically just some excerpts of the kinds of things he's repeatedly asking about. I don't know if somebody wants to read those out.
I'm happy to, yeah. So
Okay.
looks like we're in chronological order. So that's the order I'll go in. We've got January 11th. Please write back with your account of what happened. My doctors do not believe me. Then we have more than a year later. Don't worry, I haven't told them where any of this was, and I won't. We then go, another year later. Tell me they didn't die for nothing. Tell me they didn't get away with it. We then push forward over almost 2 years, a year and a half later. Perhaps if they followed me out of there, they'd still be alive. Get into the 1930, which is another year and a half. If you just sent word telling your version of events, perhaps the doctors would believe you and me. And we get to 1931, almost exactly a year later. Are you ignoring me, or is this your way of trying to help me? Your silence echoes. I think you're trying to tell me something. We jump ahead 2 years. Things are better here. I think maybe I'm free of that day at last. We're now in 1933. I'm sorry. I haven't left you in peace, my old friend. I won't write again. That is a lie, because we soon, a couple months later, get I've made a book of everything I remember and hidden it away here, but I'll tell you where it is. Just ask. Fast forward another 6 months or so into February of 34. It's been so long, I know, but I don't think that I'll ever be able to escape what happened. We then fast forward to April of the same year. It wasn't real. Perhaps it wasn't real. They tell me it wasn't real. I'm sorry if I frightened you. Then we get to the end of 1934. Do you even remember what happened anymore? I wonder if you've even opened my letters. And Alice, I'm reading those on my own, and then hand them to you. And if it's okay, I'd like to turn to the doctor and go, Dr. Fisher, do you have a moment?
Of course.
And I want to step far enough away that I'm out of earshot of everybody, especially out of earshot of Janet.
Mm-hmm. She sort of notices that, but doesn't say anything.
Dr. Fisher, I want to get a sense. Is Miss Winston Rogers well?
Dr. Fisher kind of thinks for a second. Well, I know firsthand that she has suffered some heavy losses, and dealing with a mentally handicapped family member as close as a father will never be easy. But she seems mostly in her right mind. But grief is a powerful thing. And it'll take a moment longer to consider. Can you think of anything that I kind of noticed while she was talking, like weird inflections, strange postures that he wasn't used to last time he saw her?
No, the main impression you get of her is that um, you sense that maybe she feels a little silly asking about this because it's like she doesn't have a lot to go on, but it's obviously very important to her. But you don't get any sign that she's being, obsessive about it or otherwise, unhealthy about it. The impression you get is, frankly, she's, from the sounds of it, with her husband and her father both passing, she's a very wealthy woman now, and this is an important thing to her, so she's going to spend some money and see what she can learn.
Then I'll relay that to Mr. Byrne. She's mentally sound. She's simply a woman with means who's trying to uncover a great loss. It's a bit like if you were to ask someone to look for monsters under your bed when you'd stopped believing in them long ago.
That's helpful, Doctor. When you get a chance to look at the Henslow letters, when she, and I kind of gesture vaguely towards Alice, when she's finished with them, do you have the ability to extract the mental condition of somebody based on their handwriting?
That was not part of my bailiwick, but I could see if there was any discrepancies, if there was more erratic writing. I could perhaps see what I could find. And are any of them addressed to the secondary address?
Yeah, there's a period of time where I see the letters go back and forth, and Doctor, if it's okay, I don't really know the other two, but I would like for us to share information with each other, and when I get a better sense of the other two, obviously I would do the same. Though I'm not quite sure it'll ever happen with him, and I just kind of vaguely point towards Sal.
People will surprise you, Mr. Burton.
I have
Give
learned
them a
that.
chance.
I'm very sure of that. And I think the Doctor, if you're reading me at all, I think that you can tell that I'm slightly surprised with the level of comfort I feel around you. That this is uncharacteristic of me. For whatever reason, I have instilled a certain level of trust in you, and this is the first sign of any of that's happened.
You don't know what trust is.
Exactly.
Exactly. I will say, James, one other thing you definitely would have noticed when you're going through, and Alice and anyone who looks at these letters will see it as well. The first couple letters, especially the first letter, there are a lot of pencil markings on them, like certain letters are circled or underlined, or there's like some letters written in the margins, that are in a different handwriting. So someone was definitely trying to find something in this letter, it looks like.
While Dr. Fisher and Mr. Burton were speaking, I think Alice finishes off the letter and looks towards them, and then looks towards Sal and holds them out. Would you like to read these as well, Mr. Ricardo?
Absolutely. Let me take a gander at those. Yeah. He'll start looking at them. Ryan, there any letters that aren't addressed in the list that we had that may have been in between those 1 year or 2 years?
No, that this looks like the entire set.
Okay. Sal will finish him up, and he'll nod, say, "Interested, very interested," and he'll put him back down.
So I'm not sure what else I can tell you at the moment. I've arranged for a hotel nearby for the night, and assuming everyone's willing, Frank can get you down to Savannah tomorrow. All I ask is that you keep in contact with me, a telegram or perhaps a phone call if it's something urgent, to let me know what you find. Obviously, if you have any questions along the way, I'm eager to help in any way I can, because you're doing me a great service.
Do you still have any of your father's books from those times? Or I think you said he burned them all?
He burned a number of them, and she kind of gestures at the shelves behind her and says, "A lot of these are what was left of his library. I sort of find them comforting to have them around. They're one of the few things I have left of that are really his, rather than just things that were in the house. Feel free to look at them if you'd like."
And Miss, any of them stand out to you as being odd or in any way dealing with his most recent hobby?
I don't really know. I got the feeling that he burned most of the ones that were occult related. That seemed to be where his focus was. I don't really know the field very well, so I'm not sure I can tell you, but there's a lot of books about world travel and different world cultures and that sort of thing. I don't recall any of them being especially important or well thumbed.
I'd like to peruse them, Brian, and I would like to just jot down any titles that just seem out of place to me, if there are any.
There's a section that has a couple things. There's things like there's something called the Book of Ceremonial Magic, which seems like it's not really like a spell book, quote unquote. It doesn't talk about how to do these things, but it's sort of like an analysis of how different cultures do some of their ceremonies and that sort of thing. Most of it that you see, like I said, there's a lot of travelogues and history books and that sort of thing. There are a few that seem to be about mysticism and folklore, but they all seem pretty entry level. It's just sort of a cursory overview. There's the Golden Bough by Fraser, which is just sort of an attempt to combine all world religions into a single mythology that never really worked, and that sort of thing. But nothing that seems particularly rare or weird to you. Of course, as I recall, James doesn't really have library use or occult, so he may not be the best one to judge.
Yeah, no, I'm just jotting some titles down.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even
I
know
think
the
Alice-
Dewey Decimal System.
I do not.
I think Alice seeing James head off to the books is like, okay, that's covered, and she's gonna kind of mosey on over to the plane and to where Frank is, and just strike up a conversation, ask him what the type is and that type of thing. She's asking questions about the type of plane that you wouldn't necessarily expect somebody who looks like she does to ask.
So not at a layman's level. She clearly sort of knows what's going on.
It's a bit higher than layman's level. So,
right. So Frank,
how many knots does she does?
Right. So Frank, looking at him, he looks more like a boxer than a pilot. He's got that kind of square face. His nose looks like it's been broken at least once. But he introduced himself. Frank Carnes, nice to meet you. And he is momentarily surprised, but then genuinely pleased that you're expressing an interest to know what you're talking about. He tells you it's a Northrop Delta. It's got a pretty good range. Seats 8. It's fast and quiet. He will go into a lot of the technical specs that Brian doesn't necessarily know offhand, but it seems like it's a pretty good plane, and he obviously knows it well. He asks, do you fly?
Well, I haven't flown this one, and it's been quite a while. But I in the past, I have had the pleasure of flying. So, but
that's
have
great.
you? Yeah, was a long time ago. A much simpler plane. You just fly in the States, or have you been abroad as well?
I did some trips into Canada a while back, and there's not a lot of intercontinental plane travel at this point. If you want to get from the Americas to Europe, your best bet is to go down to Brazil and catch a Zeppelin or get a plane, because there's not really any significant plane travel between them. But I've been down to Central America once or twice. But mostly in the States.
Oh well, I hope there's perhaps on the flight out, you'll let me sit up in the cockpit for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have the talk shop.
You love shotgun, don't you?
It just don't roll down the window in these.
Of course not. No, you only do that at a much lower altitude.
Right.
So,
Of course. I'm kidding. All right. Anybody else have anything they want to inquire or do while we're here?
Sal is going to rise and walk over to Frank. And,
Mhm.
Frank, it's good to see you.
Hey, Sal, good to see you too. And they shake hands. They obviously know each other well. You make it out all right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Good.
So it's good to see the old girl fly.
Yeah. This is actually not the plane you remember him in.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a little bit. This is more passenger focused. The other one was a little more cargo focused.
Okay.
But yeah. No, it's a good life, you know. So I'm glad you could come and help Ms. Winston Rogers out. She's good people.
She sounds like it. She really does.
It almost rudely, Brian. James, after I've kind of gone through the books, take note of Sal having a familiar conversation with the pilot. Dismisses myself. Does give Janet a bit of a kind of a touch on the shoulder, kind of a we've got this comforting touch on the shoulder. And I go to the car. And if I'm not let in, I will let myself in and sit down.
Oh yeah, he'll certainly let you in. You guys see James wander off and get back in the car.
Wow. Sal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think somebody's in a rush to get back to the hotel.
He doesn't
Dr.
seem very happy.
Yeah, I don't know. McBroody. Dr. Fisher, how about you?
Sorry.
Do you have anything else here to ask, or would you like a look at the books? Did you get a chance to look at the letters?
Oh, not yet. I was actually hoping I might for a moment.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, perhaps, I mean, it's having read them, it seems as if this person was, well, not entirely mentally stable. So I'm guessing you're the best person to study these letters. Janet, we're allowed to keep these, weren't we?
By all means, yes.
Yes, okay, so I'll hand the folder to Dr. Fisher. I think
He
very
gives
interested in your appraisal.
He gives a cursory flip through at the moment. Notes when it start. Was he with Miss Winston Rogers like at the estate for her father when any of these arrived?
No, she did not live with her father at this point, and she honestly didn't know about any of them until she was going through his papers after his death. But he had them set aside in a folder, so they clearly seemed like something he wanted to keep.
Right. Then he'll kind of take a look at the ones addressed specifically from Old Hope. I believe that was. And does this seem indicative of being written in an institute where Adrian would see a lot of his a lot of people that he might have visited while in the mental institution?
I would say if any of them were that, it would probably be the ones from the other address, the West Henry Street, because they seem to be on a cheaper paper with a lower quality. You know, the stuff from Old Hope Road seems like it's sort of a personal stationery of a better quality. So if anything was written in an institution, it would be the majority of them.
But he also seemed to be in a more sound state while at Old Hope, saying that he was in a better. Okay.
Yeah, and the handwriting, you know, not that you're a graphologist by any means, but the handwriting does seem a little bit smoother and stabler there.
Sort of like a mental retreat, like I see. I'll get a closer look at these later. I'm not quite versed in handwriting sciences specifically, but I'll do my best to see what I can get. If you don't mind for a moment, I would like to go talk to Miss Winston Rogers for a moment.
She's sort of sitting awkwardly back at the table, sort of like waiting for someone to ask her something.
And then just kind of gently ask if she can see Miss Winterwaters aside for a moment.
Of course. I mean, it seems like everyone else is in the car or over by the plane, so you
Mhm.
have some decent
So-
privacy here.
They'll just kind of sit down, take a moment, and kind of shift their face a little to be less kind of the very formal smile, and it calms a little. I'm sorry I wasn't able to offer your father much solace whenever I returned home.
I wish the situation had been better, that you could have spent more time with him. I feel like you were going in the right direction, but if he didn't want to be helped, there's only so much you could do.
Indeed. I remember him before. For a few years, I didn't see much of him, but I remember I'd see him on occasion whenever we were both rather young. He seemed very driven.
Yes, he was. He always wanted to achieve more, which is why
I
the
wonder.
sudden collapse at the end is so striking.
I understand. It's a lot to handle, and I believe you're doing so beautifully, but it's all right if there are rough days.
Thank you.
I wonder, do you have his mortar and pestle? I worked alongside a few pharmacists whenever I was in Vienna, and they seemed very determined to have a memento of their pharmaceutical feats.
I think there's one back at his house. I never paid much mind to it, frankly. It's not like he was making any preparations himself. But I think it's still there if it's of some value.
I believe it would be more value to you. Oftentimes having mementos of those you lost, while clinging to them too much can lead to obsession, can also give you some comfort.
Thank you. Maybe I'll do that.
It's good to see you again.
And you as well. Thank you again for coming to help.
Of course, it was the least I could do. And then Adrian just kind of excused himself and head over to the plane first.
Okay. So that other guy, not too friendly, huh?
Is that Frank talking
That
to
was just,
yourself?
yeah, that was Frank
Yeah.
to you guys in
Oh.
general.
Reserved and yes. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Burton, that's, I haven't met him before. Sal, have you?
It kind of looks familiar. I can't place him though.
Okay. Oh, well.
Maybe if I
we'll,
pulled the stick out of his ass, I'd see him better.
perhaps some people need some time to thaw out. So
Yeah, there's one in
perhaps
every crowd.
yeah. Oh, well.
He's an observant
But,
type. He'll come around eventually, hopefully.
in any case, perhaps if we're all done here, we head back to the house, get prepared,
Sounds
and then Frank leave. I think you'll be flying us to Savannah tomorrow.
That's what I hear. So, if it works for you, maybe we take off around 9, get here around 8:30, make sure everybody's settled in.
Yep, that's fine. How long's the flight going to be about?
Probably about 4.5 hours.
Okay.
Also, will the books be available for later for us to look at, or is this the one chance we have to look at the books in the library?
I mean, they're not going with you, so I mean, you could certainly probably come back at some point and look at them, but this is certainly the last easy opportunity.
Then Adrian will take a look with library use.
Yeah, again, you're looking through, and like I said, it's got a lot of travel and history sort of stuff there. The one thing you notice is that there are, even in areas where they have a lot of books, there are some gaps. There are some things that you feel should be obvious, in a collection about, I don't know, Eastern European folklore. There's like some obvious texts that should be there but aren't. So it seems like there are a few things that are missing, possibly because
It'd be like if you have
have
Greek classics and you're missing Homer.
right, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So, nothing that jumps out pattern wise other than that, but it does seem like this is a subset of a library.
Okay. Let's look.
So if that's good for everyone, the driver will gather everyone in, take about a 5-minute drive to a nearby hotel, nice mid-range hotel, 4 rooms. And he says he can, he'll pick you up in the morning and bring you to the airport. He bids you a good night.
Before
Alice,
we...
before
No, go ahead, Alice.
before James Burton heads off or anything, she's going to look towards him and say, "Well, will you perhaps join us for dinner, Mr. Burton? We can compare notes."
I'll probably just eat in the room, but it appears the 4 of us are going to be traveling companions. I've done work for the Winstons before. When the daughter asked me to dig into a few things, that was not uncommon for me to do for the family. So I know why I'm here. And because we're going to be spending time together, I'd like to get a sense of why you all are here. I see you seem to know the pilot. Is that you're in?
Frank and I go back a ways.
And do you have a sense of why the Winstons would need your services?
Because I get things done.
I try to hide the roll of the eyes, but I don't. I'm not. I don't.
You'll see.
And
You'll see. It's okay.
Doctor, I get a sense of your use in this type of investigation, but I don't have a sense of why you know the Winstons.
Old family friends. I haven't been in connection with my family for a while, but I've stayed in contact with her here and there.
And then, without saying anything, I just turned to Alice, expecting an answer.
Well, I briefly took care of her mother, who also passed away. So I think that's how I know her. I'm not quite sure why she asked me to assist you guys. She said it's not going to be dangerous, but, well, let's just say if it does turn out that way, I know my way around a first aid kit. So perhaps she asked me just in case, but in any case, it sounded like an interesting adventure to go on.
So you're a nurse?
Yes.
I just clam right back up. Step out of the car, head to the front desk, get my hotel key.
What about you, Mr. Burton?
Private eye. I've done work for the Winstons on a few occasions. Both the father did some work for the husband as well. It's actually my first time having this lengthy of a conversation with the young lady. But usually when Mr. Winston needed something figured out, especially involving this merger, there was a few things that I looked into for him.
All right. Well, it sounds like everyone's ready to make an evening of it. So this might be a good time for us to go ahead and take a quick break. And then we will pick up on the flight to Savannah tomorrow.
Beautiful. Quick 10-minute break. We'll be right back.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. We've got fresh coffee. And it's morning, I hear.
All right. Yep. So your friendly chauffeur comes by in the morning, picks you all up, loads your stuff in. I get the impression there was a little time at the hotel bar. Everyone was mostly traveling a little light except Sal. How's Sal doing in the morning?
He's having trouble getting out of bed.
Okay.
He needs a little more, time to get motivated.
All right. Well,
and Sal, if you are the last person to the car in the morning, you get a look from me as I pull my pocket watch out and look at the watch and look back at you again. Don't say anything. Just.
And I think Alice kind of woke you up by rapping on your door very loudly. just very smartly and very in a smart but unforgiving manner.
I imagine
Sal, time
that
to get up.
I imagine that Alice and maybe Adrian as well were trying to slide water towards Sal the entirety of last night. It wasn't working out.
He's got
Did
like
not-
4 glasses of full water.
Just one get in the head.
So with a little bit of poking and prodding and dragging, Sal makes it to the car with everyone else. You get driven back to the airport. Frank has the plane out on the runway all lined up and ready to go. The chauffeur assists you with your luggage inside. There's basically a luggage section in the tail, 4 sets of 1-in-1 seats in the main cabin, and then pilot and co-pilot seats up front. He says, Alice, since you're expressing interest, certainly if you want to sit up here, either during takeoff or once we get going, whatever makes you happy. I'm easy.
If it's not a bother to you, I'd like to join you for takeoff.
No, not at all. So once everybody gets seated, he taxis off and gets going, and it's I imagine for most of you except Alice, this is quite possibly your first time on an airplane,
And that's visible in James's face.
see one of those white knuckle flyers.
Yeah, like I'm sure the doctor recognizes it immediately, but even Sal, it's that obvious. Sal, you can notices. Trying to hide it, but I'm not doing a very good job.
Mm-hmm. It is not that you have any basis for comparison, but it's surprisingly smooth and a bit quieter than you would have expected it to be. But yeah, he once you've taken off and are flying, Frank basically just sort of turns around and leans back in the seat and says, like I said, it's going to be about 4.5 hours. So, make yourselves comfortable. I'll let you know if anything changes.
I would be
And
buried
I
in
think
the
Alice,
paper.
after asking him for some, explanations on the dials, etc., and having spoken to him briefly, she'll excuse herself and said, "I'll just check in the back with the others."
Sure. Yeah.
But thanks for letting me sit up front.
Yeah, no, he seems genuinely delighted that you're interested and is happy to describe all the details and talk about how you need to worry about if the fuel pressure gets over this and But yeah.
And Alice will carefully, one hand on the airplane somewhere, move back into the back and join the others in the seat.
Okay. Now, maybe it's just me, but I'm getting the impression so far that everybody is sitting staggered by themselves, so no one's near anyone else.
Well, perhaps Alice came to sit down next to. I think she sits down next to James. She's going to sit down and say, "Well, Mr. Burton, have you flown? Have you ever flown before?"
No. I prefer the train.
Oh, well,
you?
Oh, I like the train as well, but I've flown for. It is the quickest way to get to some places, but I remember the first time in an airplane. It was a much smaller craft and a lot windier, an open one. So, but this is actually a very fine plane.
You say open one, and you can see James give an appreciation for the roof. He looks up at the roof and just looks back at you. What did Mrs. Winston die of?
Well, we shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but alcoholism. She was it's probably something. I think the liver gave out at the end. I'm guessing that whatever impact the father had on the wife, that the wife took to drinking, I don't know. She was. I was briefly engaged to nurse her, to care for her, but so no, not an airplane, not an airplane crash. If you're worried about that, it's a really safe mode of travel. I mean, I have. Oh, it's been a very long time, and it was a much older plane. But have you heard of Amelia Earhart and what she's doing? It's such an adventure. I think she's planning to go around the world.
Which I think is silly, but whatever gets you in the papers gets you in the papers. And I'm going to kind of loudly refold my paper, like I'm going to go to a different section, and I fold it up and just kind of break eye contact with you and just start reading again.
Okay, well,
Sal,
Alice
for
is
his
just
part,
going to shrug.
go ahead.
So-
Sal,
and
for
then-
his part, will take his fedora off, kind of slide it over his hat. Says, "Do me a favor. If we start to plummet toward the earth, you start screaming, so that way I can wake up and scream with you." And with that, he'll go
Will
to
do,
sleep.
Sal. Will do, Sal. And then Alice is going to look towards where Dr. Fisher is, kind of raise an eyebrow, like, "Do you want to talk?"
Do you need help? I imagine Doc Fisher's probably reading one of his like a book, probably War of the World is one of his favorites, and just kind of sees you looking at him, just like motions if you want to come over.
And Alice will go sit down next to Dr. Fisher and look at the book and like, oh, haven't read that one yet.
I'm a big fan of speculative fiction, Frankenstein, or H.G. Wells. It's fascinating to me. So I imagine you've flown before with your confidence.
I've been on a number of flights, and I must say the last couple of ones have been much bigger planes with not as comfortable as this one, but it's been a couple of years now. So
Were you in service?
Yeah. If you're let's say join the army, see places, something like that, patch people up.
That's fair.
Yeah. So.
Do you know anything about Savannah? Have you ever been there?
Don't believe I have. I've mostly done my stints abroad, so I don't think I've been to Savannah, Georgia yet.
You've been to Austria.
It's always fun to see new places,
That's true.
meet new people.
Let's hope this is in some way fun and not simply depressing.
Yeah, well, it's in any case, it's a nice diversion from what I was doing. So getting out about again. So yeah.
We'll be sure to see some of the sights and not just focus on the main objective then.
So after a few hours, Frank hollers back and says, "Well, we're getting ready to come in. You can feel the plane going down, and
In a controlled way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's fine. Although, as you're getting close, you hear him say, if you look out on the left, you can see the airport, and you can look down there, and you can see there's basically a couple buildings and a big open field. There's nothing paved. There's no runways. There's no nothing. But he brings the plane in very professionally. It's a little bit of a bumpy landing just because it's a dirt surface. It's not paved or anything. So, I imagine James is probably certain that the wheels and or wings are going to come off at any moment. But it comes smoothly to a stop and nothing seems to have fallen off. I imagine that, if nothing else, wakes Sal up, the bumpy
does,
landing. And he says, welcome to Savannah, I guess. And he, gets up and, opens the door and puts down the staircase. The first thing that you notice when the door opens is it is hot and it is humid. Savannah is right on the Atlantic coast. For those who don't know, it's basically in the eastern corner of Georgia, right next to the South Carolina border. You can smell the salt air from the distance, and it is just immensely humid in a way that folks who are from the north are not used to. There's a an older guy, you know, maybe 5'2", 5'3", with a little salt and pepper beard, kind of gets up from his chair and comes over from the building and says, morning, folks, or afternoon, I guess. It's probably a little after lunch when you guys arrive. Afternoon, folks. Welcome to Savannah. You folks, if you folks staying long, you got reservations at a hotel or something?
Yes. We're going to need a car.
All right, yeah. Albert will probably be along presently, and he can get you a lift and rent your car if you want.
And what would I find here and what would I find here? And I've torn a sheet out of my notebook and I've written the two addresses that we got on the return addresses. And you know, gesturing to him, can you give me an idea of what's at this address and what's at this address? How familiar are you with the city?
Well, I mean, I live here all my life, but I don't go downtown much. I'm mostly on the outskirts. And he kind of scratches his head and looks at them, and he says, "This one, Old Hope Road, that's going to be out east of town on probably on what is it, Hope Island. It's kind of off in the swampy area. There's a lot of old houses and such out there. This other one is downtown. I don't reckon I know exactly where, but Albert will know. He knows these streets real well. He drives folks around a lot." And sure enough, in a few minutes, a 10 car comes up. It is just because I love the historical things. This is literally called a Chevrolet Confederate, which is one of those cars that you probably couldn't make today.
Release name.
Yep, exactly. You know, when the driver gets out, he's in a sort of a light summer suit. You know, and it says, "Well, folks, welcome to Marietta. Marietta, what are they? Welcome to Savannah. Can I get you folks a ride into town? Where are you staying?"
I don't know if we've made those arrangements yet. We need to know what are the. I was told you know what's at these two addresses, and I shared the paper with him now.
Sure. Yeah, and he says the same thing, that the one is out in the swampy areas to the east of town. Probably one of those old mansions from before the war. And the other one he kind of thinks about. He's like, all right, well, it's odd numbers, so it's on the left side. That might be the sanitarium. If it's one of the buildings right next to there, but I think it's the sanitarium.
So I'd like to turn to the three of you, and I go downtown and then find shelter.
Yeah, sounds. I think that Albert, can you recommend a hotel downtown? I'd say let's check in and then head over to the place downtown.
Sure. Probably Hotel DeSoto is your best bet. It's right in the middle of town. Pretty big, pretty clean. That treats you right. You know, if you want to be, if you're looking for a little more of a vacation time, there's the DeSoto Beach, which is out on Tybee Island, you know, for more of a beach vacation sort of thing. They might still have some openings for the summer.
It's,
I had the question.
Not a holiday.
Why would someone vacation here? It's so damn hot. I can't breathe. It's too hot.
Oh, you get used to it. It ain't bad. Now in August, it gets really, really humid. This ain't so bad.
It gets worse.
Oh yeah.
So you sound kind of like, you know,
Trust
looking
me, it
credulous for a
does.
moment.
Adrian has finally given up and has taken off the overcoat. Still has gloves on, but has taken off the overcoat.
So one fewer layers.
One less layer.
Right. You folks need a car while you're in town?
Please.
Yeah, my brother and I rent them out. So, all right, come on. It'll be a little crowded as we get into town with the four of you, but we'll make it work. And Frank basically says he's going to be here for the moment. He'll take care. You know, he has some maintenance to do on the plane after the trip. But if you're going to be at the Hotel DeSoto, he will go and check himself in there.
Sounds good, Frank. Perhaps see you this evening.
All right, sounds good. And so yeah, he takes you into town. He actually stops by his place first, which is you know, the Ross rental automobiles, and he makes you a decent deal on a little, you know, good 4-passenger Chevrolet that should do nicely for you. Not the newest car, but it's in good shape and it'll fit everybody well. And he gives you directions to both of the addresses you're interested in and the hotel. and says, if y'all need anything while you're in town, you just come on by and let me know.
If I may ask a question real quick, sir.
Hmm?
Just curious. Have you noticed, has anyone else come around recently to rent a car, or has it mostly just been
Well, there's a
quiet?
fair number of folks come in vacationing for the summer. A lot of them are driving in now. We don't get a lot of
Mhm.
planes coming in, but yeah, nobody unusual recently.
All right, thank you.
Sure. So it sounds like you guys are going to go check into the hotel.
Yeah, head to the DeSoto.
Okay. Yeah, it's a nice hotel, big big bar downstairs. And then the rooms are they're not big and they're not fancy, but they're clean. And you guys have certainly the impression you got from Ms. Winston Rogers is basically she will have an expense account for you. So basically you guys can rent the rooms and just keep a receipt and she'll pay you back. And with that, the day is yours.
Well, everybody's kind of getting comfortable and checking into their rooms and stuff like that. When I stepped out of the car, Brian, did I get a sense? I don't think Mr. Winston would ever stay here. It's not quite nice enough. But is there a nicer hotel that is within eye shot?
As far as downtown, this looks. I mean, there's a couple hotels. They all look about the same.
Okay.
You get the impression that most of the nicer places are, off on the shore as like beach resorts.
So when I check in then to the DeSoto, I would say we are here for work for I forgot his first name.
Walter.
We're here for work for Walter Winston. Does he have an account open?
It doesn't ring a bell, sir, but I'll take a look. And he kind of flips through and says, I don't see anything here by that name, sir. Is there another name it'd be under?
The only other, it possibly under Douglas Henslow. Do you have a Douglas Henslow? Do you have an account open for them?
No, sir.
Okay.
All right. So, where is your first stop?
Meet back here and head to the sanitarium, kids.
All right.
Yeah, is it walking distance or?
Yeah, you could walk.
We've got a
You
car.
could walk there. I mean, it is pretty hot, but it's not far, so make your way there. Yeah, so a few blocks away, you find that the address does indeed correspond to a building called Joy Grove Sanitarium. It is a big old red brick building. Looks like it probably dates back to before the war. And when I say before the war, I mean before the Civil War. But, a lot of ivy growing up the sides and that sort of thing. A lot of kudzu growing on there. And, it looks
Which
fine enough,
which
yeah.
address is this?
This is 513 West Henry Street.
Okay, the first
This
address.
is where most of the letters came from.
Adrian is going to kind of stop everyone before we go in. He's very happy for his umbrella at the moment, that he's using more like a parasol. But he's going to just kind of debrief everyone. Right, I'm not sure what the condition will be like in here. Mental institutes are not always the best taken care of, but this one looks like that it has a better standing. So just be prepared that there are people who are not always in their right mind. So just keep your head about you and mind your distance if you need. Yes?
Yeah, and Dr. Fisher, unless anybody else objects, I think you're the one to do most of the talking when we get inside. Obviously, we assume that Mr. Henslow was either working here or more likely staying here. But I think it'd be smart with your familiarity.
Understood. And I'll be able to get records as well.
So heading inside.
Follow them in, yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
The reception area is it's clean. It's a pretty big room. This is obviously Looks like it's been converted from a regular hospital at some point in the past few decades. There's a cute, if not gorgeous, young blonde woman behind the reception desk, and she looks brightly up as you enter and says, "Good morning. Can I help you all?"
Good morning. We were hoping to see if you had a certain patient here.
Well, I'll be happy to help you how I can. Who is it that you're looking for?
Mr. Douglas Henslow.
Oh, all right, Mr. Henslow, she says. And as she starts looking through the records, you see there's like just a door marked office behind her. It's open, and you see a gentleman's head kind of poke around the door, and he says, "I'm sorry, did you folks say you were looking for Douglas Henslow?"
Yes, sir. I'm Dr. Adrian Fisher. I was here on account of hoping to receive some information.
Well, Dr. Jonathan Keaton, he says, and shakes your hand. Pleasure to meet you. Are you friends of Mr. Henslow, family?
He is an acquaintance of someone we are working with, and they simply wanted to get more information on something that happened a while ago.
Certainly, I think we could arrange an interview with him if you'd like. Is there anything more you can tell me about the incident you're looking for?
It was something related to a family friend. We believe he was. They had shared correspondence for some years, but it was never fully apparent what had happened, and we simply want to understand what he was trying to have correspondence about.
Certainly, I think we can do that. Why don't I give you a quick look around Joy Grove? Bethany, can you get some paperwork done for an interview? And she nods and starts pulling out some forms. But please join me, and we'll just have a look around the facility. And he basically, gives you a spiel that feels more like a used car salesman than a psychiatrist. Looking around the place, it was obviously sort of a Victorian style originally. It looks like it has not gotten the best maintenance recently. A lot of there's a lot of grime and soot on the windows. There's some water damage on the tiles and the wallpaper here and there. Let's see. I know Sal has some craft, and I think Alice does as well. I mean, the building looks like it's in pretty good shape. It just hasn't been maintained very well. You can see, he does, and here's a picture of the founder, Dr. Teak, who was here when the facility first opened in 1897, and all of you, I think particularly Adrian, get the sense that there's an unspoken subtext there, and boy, it sure is time he retired and let somebody else take over. But he doesn't say that, of course. And then you kind of get to the patient area, and he says, "Now, before we head back here, I would like you to sign these waivers. It's just a formality, I assure you. But we are heading into Bedlam after all, and the patients are generally not violent. I don't expect any difficulty, but just as a pure legal formality, if you'd be so kind." And he pulls out a clipboard with a couple little waivers on them.
Does Alice get any strange feeling from this doctor? She's, she's just quietly following along, listening.
I mean, you've worked with a lot of doctors over the years. He doesn't seem that unusual to you by doctor standards. He clearly has a strong sense of his own importance. But you don't think he's, hiding anything or up to anything sneaky from anything you've seen. The waivers are pretty straightforward. You are waiving the right to sue in the event of shock, offense, assault, or battery. And once all that's done, he kind of heads through the door and starts heading back into the patient areas. Most of the patient rooms are just, little cells, for lack of a better term. There's a common area in the middle where you see some people playing cards or checkers or doing jigsaw puzzles or that sort of thing. Most of them seem very quiet and calm. There's a couple people who pick up the little paper cups that have their pills in them and that sort of thing. Occasionally you'll see someone who is just kind of staring off into the distance or banging their head against the wall before an orderly comes over and helps them out. But most of them are very, very calm and that sort of thing. And he's, Keaton is talking the whole time about, how things were and when it was established. And of course, with, funding has been a little bit more difficult since the crash. But we're very proud of what we've been able to accomplish with minimal resources and that sort of thing. We're hoping to get some funding for some more renovations and that sort of thing.
Also, does James actually jump whenever he sees one of the people banging their heads?
He looks like he's kind of accustomed to it.
Oh, James.
Oh, James, sorry.
Unnerved is the best descriptor for this entire thing. And Doctor, I think I'm staying as close to you as possible without being uncomfortable. You're my anchor at this point.
Kind of as Dr. Keaton is continuing with the spiel, just kind of leans over. Don't think too sorely of them. They aren't going to hurt you. You understand?
No, of course. Yes, of course.
And he starts making his way up to another floor, and he does say that Mr. Henslow, for his part, has been here since about 1924. He's had a difficult time of it. He's been released once or twice on his own recognizance, but the last time he started showing signs of some obsessive and violent behavior, and so he's been back here. And it's interesting, actually.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's very interesting to have two survivors of the same traumatic event at the same facility. So we've had some great opportunities to learn more about what has been causing some of his delusions.
And the other one, Doctor?
He's a man named Edgar Job. He was, I think he was one of the people, one of the organization that Mr. Henslow and his people attacked in 1924.
I'm sorry.
Attacked?
Yes, it's not entirely clear, but it seems like Mr. Henslow and some associates of him were conducting what they think was some sort of vigilante raid against what they believe to be some sort of criminal organization or cult or something. There was apparently gunfire and actual fire, and it sounds like quite a traumatic event. So neither of them have internalized it very well. So it's been difficult. I don't think either of them are going to be well enough to be released again.
And what we recognize that they thought that this place that they attacked was nefarious, but I'm getting the impression from you that you don't believe that to be the case.
It's very difficult to say. This all happened in California, so we don't have a great deal of information about what happened there. But it seems clear from Mr. Jobs' description of the situation that there was some sort of service ritual or something going on. It didn't sound like it was anything particularly violent or dangerous. And then Mr. Henslow and his people, apparently descended on the place with Molotov cocktails and gunfire. So it's difficult to determine.
This Mr. Job was part of the party conducting the ritual, I understand.
Yes, that's correct.
Just, and she'll look towards Dr. Fisher for a moment, like, do you mind if I interrupt? Just by way of curiosity, it seems a bit if this incident happened in California and then two men to end up in a facility on the other side of the country. What
It's
a coincidence.
Well, yes, it is. It is a bit odd. Mr. Henslow is a Savannah native, so he came home after the event, and when his situation became too much for him, he voluntarily committed himself here. My understanding is that Mr. Job apparently came here a few years back to seek out Mr. Henslow to try to bury the hatchet, as it were. And at that point, Mr. Henslow became violent when he realized who he was, and then they've both been here ever since.
And do either of them have a patron? You said that Mr. Henslow admitted himself. Do either of them have any form of guardianship or family ties within the city?
I believe Mr. Henslow's mother is still alive and resident at their home, but he's mostly he's stable enough to see that he needs help here, so he's been remaining here, and there's been no attempt to get him out. As far as I know, Mr. Job doesn't have anyone.
Who's
And
paying Mr.
was it-
Jobs' bill, though?
We're actually taking his bill mostly because I'm fascinated in seeing the case develop. I would say that James and probably Adrian also get the feel that that may not be entirely true. But at any rate, he says, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you go ahead and let your assistant know that we're also going to need to speak to Mr. Jobs?
Oh, yes, we can certainly do
And would
that.
you please pull both of their records for me to? I can provide ID identification if you need it to allow me access.
Yeah, he does ask to just verify, because obviously those records are private matters. But he says, well, why don't I imagine the interview room for Mr. Henslow is almost ready. I'll go and get those papers. If you just wait here for me for a moment, I'll be right back.
Thank you, Doctor.
And sort of leaves the four of you in this sea of troubled individuals. Again, none of them are particularly, causing trouble or that sort of thing.
How is Sal holding up?
Sal looks uncomfortable, but he's okay. I mean, it's obvious he is trying to not look like he's obviously uncomfortable, but there are tales. Yes,
This is fine. So are you all
people
just
banging on their head. Yeah, I've seen that before.
sure, it happens. It happens.
Usually I'm the one doing the banging.
And then at one point, James, as you guys are just sort of, waiting idly by to see, you notice that there is one patient who's just kind of staring at you.
At me, particularly?
At you personally, yeah.
I'm going to kind of nudge you, Doc, and kind of point that and say, this is targeted at me. Is this normal?
Kind of takes a step over in your
Oh,
direction.
no, I'm asking Dr. Adrian.
Yeah, no. I'm saying
Oh, I'm sorry.
while you're saying this, the patient takes a step in your direction.
Do they look fully cognizant, or does it seem like they've just found like a visual anchored kind of?
Yeah, it's hard to say. He doesn't look, it's not like his eyes are glazed or anything like that. It's almost like he thinks he recognizes someone.
Fish recognition is a strange thing for people with mental issues. I believe they simply think you look like someone they know. If it just you can stand on the other side of me and try to avoid their visual contact with you to kind of break that recognition.
And Sal, if it's okay with you, might be the first time that I've acknowledged that you're in the same room with me. I kind of grab your sleeve and kind of pull you towards us as this person approaches.
All right. Yeah, I mean, he sort of steps to the side, nonchalantly.
Okay. And this guy, it doesn't seem, to bother him that you pulled out in front. He sort of starts going around to the side to get a look at James.
Is Adrian starting to feel like this is a situation that needs to be diffused, or is this just pure curiosity? That doesn't seem like it'll.
It doesn't seem like it's not aggressive, except in the sense that you're sort of in a person's space, but it doesn't look hostile to you.
This is.
Can I help you, sir?
And the second those words come out of your mouth, James, he lunges at you.
Phenomenal.
That's why you thought that. It's like, hey, just mind your business. Don't look at them. Don't talk
It's fine.
to them.
Everything's
Like,
fine.
hey, yeah,
No touch, no talk, no eye contact.
yeah. Like,
And I
what
do
we're gonna
all those
look,
things.
Look at them directly in the eye. Ask them what they're doing.
Yeah. So he let me just roll a die here. Yeah, he lunges up and he, you were on edge, so you're mostly dodging away, but he kind of grabs a hold and bites your arm.
Phenomenal.
Like your upper arm here. And that is going to do a small amount of damage. Ooh.
And by small,
I mean 5 points of damage. I mean, this is fine. He bites hard enough to draw significant blood. And like the second that happens, like 2 orderlies come out of nowhere and start grabbing him and pulling him back. And he's just kind of looking at you with a little bit of blood running down his mouth. He says, I know you know.
I'm covering my wound and obviously pulling back and shuddered, but I want to have enough sense to yell at somebody. Maybe it's the orderlies. Like, who is this man?
They just said it's Fred. He's not usually like this. And one of them actually kind of has like a truncheon or a nightstick out. He's not hitting him with it, and he's not really resisting after being drawn away. It's like it's almost like he bit you and now he's done. But they sort of drag him away. This is just around the time Dr. Keaton comes back and he says, "Oh, wait, Mr. Culver, get him to his room, sedate him. I'm terribly. Are you all right, sir? Would you like to have our nurse look at that?"
Does he normally bite people?
No, this is the first time this sort of thing has happened. He's normally a very quiet man. Did you? I don't want to sound like I'm casting blame. Did you provoke him in some way?
He was
There no
walking.
provocation.
Yeah. He was just walking towards me, and I asked if I could help him.
I believe it was a situation of misplaced identity. He seemed to find familiarity in his face. And...
Well, I'm terribly sorry. We'll certainly have that wound seen to. And he, kind of gets a nurse to come over and clean it up, stitch it up.
And what will happen to Mr. Frank?
Well, we'll certainly talk to him about what happened, and we may need to change his medication. Obviously, we'll need to find out what triggered this sort of behavior. But we try not to punish this individual. Obviously, we need to discourage this sort of behavior in the future. So he may have some time in isolation or some cold water treatment, that sort of thing. But there won't be. It's not as though we're going to beat him or anything like that. We're not barbarians.
Understood.
So yeah, they quickly bring you into a little side infirmary room and do a little bit of first aid, which will get you some of those wounds back. As soon as I find my right page.
You don't need to look it up. It's 6. You get 6 back.
Let's see. Yeah, they will spend. You'll get 4 back.
Beautiful.
And obviously everyone is very apologetic as well. I've got Mr. Henslow available, but I can understand if you might not want to proceed right now. If after this regrettable incident, would you like to proceed or perhaps reschedule this for another day?
We want to proceed, and I would like to turn to you, Doctor, at some point. I don't care if Sal and Alice alone, but I want nobody in the facility to hear this. I asked you, I said, how hard would it be to get their paperwork too?
Are you asking this to me or to the other doctor?
To you, Dr. Fisher.
And I'm guessing you're talking about Frank.
The person who just bit me. Yeah.
Yeah, Fred
Mhm.
Fred Culper is his name.
Fred. I believe I should be able to manage that.
Yeah. I need to know where he's from.
And you can see that Dr. Keaton does have a couple of folders with him as he comes back in, and he says, "Well, if everyone's all right, then let's move on." And he brings you to a little interview room, which is a small, pretty Spartan setup. There's a couple of chairs, a metal table, and a little barred window looking out in the hallway. It's pretty cramped with all of you in there. But Dr. Keaton introduces you to Douglas Henslow. He's an older man, looks like he's starting to, get out of shape. He doesn't seem like he gets much exercise here, losing his hair. But, despite the fact that he's in, sort of the regulation outfit here, he sort of has a certain ragged dignity about him. And he says, good afternoon. I don't believe I know you folks, but it's good to meet you.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Dr. Adrian.
I see it, Dr. Adrian. Good to meet you. And Keaton kind of steps in and says, Douglas, these people are here to talk about the incident that happened back in 1924. And he sort of nods and says, sure. What can I tell you about it? Are you police? Are you reporters? What's your interest in this matter?
We are here on account of a familial matter. There was someone you were sending letters to, and their daughter was wanting more information.
Did Walter send you?
Walter's daughter sent us.
Yes,
So he did get them. Okay.
he did, and he was paying attention to them.
And you can just see the relief come over his body as you say that. It's like I wasn't sure any of them were getting through to him. So that's yes. Whatever I can tell you, I'll be happy to.
Mr. Henslow, I need you to understand first that whatever you say will not be held with any less credibility. I want you to be able to speak freely, all right?
All right. And Dr. Keaton, who was kind of taking some notes, on his own little legal pad, sort of gives a tiny little frown at that, but he doesn't say anything. He says, of course, what would you like to know?
If I may address the letters first to sort of ease into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
How often were you sending these letters, do you recall?
Oh, well, it varied. There was sometimes a year or more would go. I tried to put it out of my mind as much as possible, but every once in a while it got to the point where I had to try and find out if I had, as Dr. Keaton suggested, imagined much of it, or if there was someone who could vouch for the reality of what I had seen. And then, when Walter never responded, I started to wonder how much of what I thought I remembered had actually happened. There were times when I would write every few months or so, and then there were some long periods when I didn't write at all.
And some of your letters you wrote from a different location, yes?
Yes, I was out for a few years back at my family home.
Understood.
But it wasn't good for me. I had to come back here.
Understood. I had actually spent some time caring for Mr. Walter, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Winston. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't go too much into the accounts of it. Would you be comfortable sharing the accounts of what happened in California?
Of course, he says, and he kind of looks at Dr. Keaton, who is busy writing, and he just kind of takes a breath and says, "We were on the trail of I guess you'd call it a cult, a drug dealing cult. And we had been following their activity across the country and eventually all the way to Los Angeles, which seemed to be their headquarters. And that's where things got bad.
And this cult, how did you come to know about it?
It began with something that Walter had discovered. There was some, I think he was doing some investigation about some chemical developments that got in touch or touched on whatever these people were doing. It was some sort of mood altering drug. And I think it quickly became, to some extent, yes. And it quickly became apparent that this was not a respectable medical process, but rather something, a street level, recreational drug, you might say. And the more we looked into it, the more clear it became that these were monstrous people behind it. It seemed clear from what we had found that the cult was using drug money to fund these rituals and such that they were doing. And Walter and FC, who was the occult expert of the group, had put together that there was some kind of summoning they were planning to do in this barn on the outskirts of Los Angeles. They were worshiping this being. They called it the thing with 1,000 mouths. And it sounded like they were going to try and bring it to Earth, as ridiculous as that seems. Catherine, who was one of our team, was keeping an eye on the place and saw them gathering one night. And FC said something about the stars being right for them to try this ritual. And so we went over there with guns to try and, I don't know, save the world, or whatever it might be.
Sir, if I may ask, FC, is that Fred Culver?
No, I don't believe I know what it ever stood for. No, his name was F.C. Coleman, some sort of professor from Massachusetts. Fella in a wheelchair, but it never really held him back. He was a bit of a stick in the mud, but a smart man, and he knew a lot about these rituals and such. At any rate,
I'm sorry. While that's happening, Dr. Adrian, I'm going to pass you a note. And on that note, it just says, ask him why Mr. Walter brought him in. Right.
Just kind of nods discreetly as he's talking.
So we got there just after sunset, and they were already doing their perverse rituals inside this barn, and we had to stop them. There's no fine way to say it. We set the barn on fire, and when they started running out screaming, we thought we'd done it. We thought we'd stopped whatever they were trying to do. And then this thing came out, and Dr. Keaton kind of leans forward and says, "It's all right if you don't want to talk about this, Douglas. It's we've talked through how this is just your externalization of those fears." And Douglas nods in a way that indicates that he clearly does not believe any of that.
If you're all right with this, I would like to return to that at a later moment. But first, may I know why Mr. Winston brought you along for this endeavor?
Well, we all had our roles, I guess. I did a lot of interviewing of witnesses, a lot of library research, cross-referencing history, a lot of paperwork, frankly. But it suited me. We had all gotten together, and we all agreed that something needed to be done. The more we learned about this organization, and I think partly I was asked to come along because there wasn't anybody else.
Understood. And when did you return from this endeavor?
A few days afterwards. We after it happened, I just ran like a goddamn coward. And after a few days, I couldn't find any of the others, so I just got a train back here.
And Adrian kind of take a piece of paper and kind of
Mhm.
rip it off and slide it to the edge of the table that just says any questions, like
Mhm.
all three of you, if y'all have anything specific y'all are wanting to ask. All right, let's see. Mr. Henslow, you're a visual man.
I mean,
Have
yeah,
you ever
as
taken
do
to
I.
drawing or sketching?
I do have in the past, yeah.
If it is all right with you, and of course, if it is too burdensome on the mind, you can refuse, but perhaps it would be easier for you to simply draw without thinking and considering what you saw. Simply draw from your subconscious rather than trying to evoke it purely.
Um, when you say that, he sort of looks over at Dr. Keaton, who sort of looks back at him with sort of interest. How are you going to handle this? He says, and he says, I don't. It's best that I don't try to dwell on that, given my attempts at recovery here. But
Understood.
I did write a notebook at the time that had some sketches to try and understand what they were doing and what they're still doing, as far as I know. And if you wanted to see that, you could go to my estate and ask Frank Hickering about it. I can write you a note to give to the groundskeeper to let you in.
Yes, sir. There's no need to force you to go back to that moment
I
if
I,
unnecessary.
I appreciate that.
Of course. And then just kind of pause a second to kind of just let there be a break in this interview, so it's not just question after question, and wait to see if anybody else has something they want to ask.
So, Mr. Henslow, who is this Frank Hickering, and why does he have your book?
He's someone I trust.
Because
It's just you get the feeling there's something more going on here that he's not willing to talk about or not wanting to talk about. But he says it's just he can get you the information I need. He's reliable.
Did Mr. Hickering know Mr. Winston?
No.
Understood.
I think Alice is going to, in a quiet moment, look to both the doctors and then towards Douglas and say, "I understand there's another person in this institution who was there as well on that night."
Yeah, that's right. He was one of them, and I guess he made it out too. And I don't know. At one point, when I was out at home, he came to try and find me, saying he wanted to sort of apologize and try and make things better. And I just, thinking back to the things they did, I couldn't accept that.
what type of things?
These what's your approach in terms of like, how give me a skill that you're sort of approaching here. I can see
Yeah,
this
this is
being
definitely. I'm definitely kind of reverting back to
Mhm.
previous employment.
Right.
So it's definitely it's definitely in a tone of interrogation.
Okay.
So I'm thinking interrogation.
Okay. And he sort of looks at you and he says, "Sir, these people were monsters. They were fornicating in the name of their wicked god in groups. They were doing drugs I'd never even heard of. They would hurt each other for sport. You cannot imagine how depraved these people were.
They would hurt each other? I don't understand.
Well, I wouldn't like to discuss it in detail with a lady present, but suffice it to say that they were a violent and crude and lustful collection of people that they were monstrous. Let's leave it at that.
When we get a chance to look at your notebook, will we have any details of these activities in the notebook, or?
Well, I didn't draw any sketches of that sort of behavior, if that's what you're suggesting. But,
did you take notes? Did you jot this down?
Yes, we all took some notes. Mine are, I think, the only ones that survive, as far as I know.
That seems to satisfy me.
Okay.
Have you been in contact with, because I know, well, you've reached out to Walter a number of times, but any of the others? This Catherine and F.C. Coleman?
No, the other three all died that night.
Only you and Walter, and, well, this cultist who is now here in the same
And
building as yourself?
some of the others from the cult, I imagine, got away. But it was madness. I couldn't really tell who was going where.
And Mr. Coleman, he passed as well on that?
Mm-hmm. He was in the car, since it wasn't really a good terrain for a wheelchair, and the thing just pulled him out and tore him apart. And Dr. Keaton says, well, that's certainly how you remember it, Douglas. And he kind of nods without looking at Keaton.
So, Douglas, between the hurting, the murdering, and the burning, how are you not in jail?
I was out of there before the police arrived, I suppose.
Was there any legal ramifications? Was anybody arrested for this?
I don't know. I left the state as soon as I could. I imagine there's got to be some police reports or something, and if there were survivors, maybe some of them got arrested. But I frankly tried to get out of there and not think of it for a long time. It was bad.
Mr. Henslow, do you find that your memory fades at all at any certain point, as if it is trying to block anything out? Or do you feel that you have a full, vivid recollection of every event?
Dr. Adrian, I honestly wish some of those memories had been blocked out. Like I say, it's not entirely clear. It was a very chaotic situation, but I feel as though I remember it in all too much detail.
Understood. Just kind of sits quietly for a second.
And Dr. Keaton sort of takes that silence and says, well, if there's nothing else, perhaps we can let Douglas get back on with his day and see if there's any other matters you want to discuss while you're here.
Love some time with you if we could, Dr. Keaton.
Of course. Douglas, thank you for your cooperation here. I'll be back to talk to you this afternoon. Douglas nods to all of you.
One more thing, Mr. Henslow. Just curious, were you here whenever Mr. Fred Culver was admitted, or did he come after you? If you know
I think he's only been here about a year or so. So I guess I was here when he got here. I don't know much about him, right?
Well, I hope the rest of your day can prove more peaceful. So it was good to meet you.
And he just looks back and he says, "Thank you for listening."
Always.
He makes his way back out into the common areas. And Dr. Keaton says, "So there was something you wanted to ask, sir?"
Yeah, so you're treating him, and obviously delusional. I have a hard time believing that this much death and destruction occurred, and we don't know about any type of police reports. Where are you headed in treatment to understand what really happened? Is there a narrative that you believe is closer to the truth that we're trying to settle towards, or?
Well, it seems that Mr. Henslow did not have any sort of history of violence or military service. I imagine most of what's going on is just the chaos of some amount of violence and bloodshed, regardless of how much it may actually have been, seems to have been externalized as this creature, this monster figure. So we're just gradually working to try and help him understand that monsters aren't real, and whatever this was is just his way of trying to deal with the guilt of whatever violence he may have committed.
How much overlap is there between what Henslow accounts versus Job?
They do have very similar descriptions of how the thing was evoked, but I'm not certain how much we have had some controlled opportunities for the two to deal with each other, but I'm not sure that they didn't seem to have time to concoct a story together or get each other to agree, but they both describe similarly about the fire and the violence, and then the creature showing up and killing everyone.
And does Job acknowledge this participating in some sort of ritual?
Yes, he's not shy about that sort of thing.
And does he say why he's involved, why he was doing these things?
As far as I could tell, it seemed as though he just fell in with a charismatic religious figure and was doing it because that's what the group was doing. I don't think he's an inherently bad man, and he does seem to be doing better as far as rationalizing and talking about what really happened rather than ascribing it all to a monster. So
has it been considered that there was any hallucinogenic effect from whatever drugs were in the area? Perhaps there was a outpouring of chemicals in the area with the fumes as well.
It's certainly a possibility. Unfortunately, we don't have any information or samples to go on, so it would just be a guess at this point.
Would we be able to speak to Mr. Job as well, perhaps?
Of course, I've made the arrangements. If you're ready, I'll have him brought in. And he
Most obliged.
Gets up and heads outside for a few minutes. And when he returns, he is with a smaller, younger man, a little bit kind of ruffled and unkempt, who is kind of comes in. He smells of cigarettes, and he kind of comes in and sits down and gives a little nervous nod to each of you. And Dr. Keaton, kind of says, "Edgar, these people are here to ask about the incident that happened in Los Angeles with Douglas, and I'd like you to tell them as honestly and truthfully as you can what you remember from that time." And Job kind of nods. Any of you got any cigarettes?
I pull out my cigarettes and give him one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And he, kind of, he can't use a lighter, so he sort of, gets it lit from you, I guess. And he kind of says, "Well, I'm not really supposed to talk about that night. Dr. Keaton has said I wasn't ready yet. He didn't want me to externalize my fears. He usually don't like me talking about monsters unless they're me." But yeah, I'll tell you what I can. What do you want to know?
First, Mr. Edgar, let's work under the pretense that you are in fact not a monster to begin with.
Sure, okay.
Why don't we begin a bit earlier? Perhaps not that specific night. Could you tell us more about what you found yourself surrounded by, the situation you were in? How did you fall into this?
Sure. You know, we didn't have a name or nothing. We were just Echeveria's people. His first name was, I think, Ramon. Anyway, he did. I met him, I guess, around the time I was at UCLA. Guy named George introduced us. George Avery Ayers, something like that. I can hear his voice. I don't know why I can't remember his name. Anyway, I was studying math, and George put me in touch with this guy Echeverria. And it started out with just these crazy parties he had. It was you know, sex and drugs and all kinds of, you know, all kinds of craziness. I was basically high from 1923 through August of 24. He had this huge library full of all these creepy books and stuff, and he got us these really strong drugs. And he was promising all of us power. That was what he said. He said it was going to be power, and would all get whatever we wanted in the new time when Golgoroth came. That was the name of the thing he was, you know, praying to, I guess. That was the thing we were trying to summon. Sometimes he called it the Fisher from outside. He didn't like us using that other name for some reason. But
Did you ever hear the term "thing of a thousand mouths"?
yeah, I think he used that sometimes as well. These whole things, they got a lot of names.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, and then we started, you know, doing these rituals and setting up this whole big event, I guess you say.
Mm-hmm. And what went into coordinating this event?
Well, there was a lot of stuff set up in this barn. You know, they had all this stuff carved on the floor. He put some spells on us. I mean, on me anyway. That night, he said it sounded like it was kind of a big deal. He put this spell on me on the night of the summoning in front of everybody, right before the thing showed up. I mean, I don't know what it was supposed to do, but I mean, I survived, so maybe that's something.
Were you a centerpiece of this ritual?
It sounded like, yeah, that's what he wanted it to be. I mean, I didn't do nothing special before it showed up, and everything kind of went to shit. Pardon my went to heck after that happened. So I don't know what was supposed to happen. It wasn't what he said it was going to be. It wasn't what he promised.
What did he promise?
He said we'd have power. He said we'd get everything we wanted in the new world, because we would bring the Fisher from outside into Earth and give him, you know, we'd give the world to him and he'd give the world to us. So I don't know what was supposed to happen, but that wasn't it.
You said you were studying mathematics, yes?
Yeah.
Was there any of was any of that education put to use in this cult?
Not really. I mean, there was some geometric stuff with the circles on the floor that I helped out with, but it was nothing really math heavy.
Mm-hmm. And skipping over the night for a moment for us to return to, how did you locate Mr. Henslow?
Well, I was able to. There was some guys in the cult, the group, who had some connections with the police, so I was able to get some information about the car they had rented, and his name was on it. And I spent a long time just trying to find him, reaching out in different places until I eventually found what might be a good name here. So I came to have a look, and it was definitely him, but he wasn't ready to talk about it.
What were you hoping to discover?
I just, it'd been almost 10 years, and I'm not sure how much of what I remember was really happening. And I just wanted somebody else who knew it was real or could tell me it wasn't. I didn't know enough to, I don't know what I wanted. I wanted somebody else who had been there, really.
How long did you stay in contact with your fellow cult members to get to their police connections after the event?
It was just a couple weeks. Nobody wanted to talk about it or do anything about it. I had to give them all the money I had left to even get that much. So, and then, ever since then, nobody wants to talk about nothing.
What happened to Ramon?
Oh, they killed him. This one big guy had a shotgun, just blew him apart, point blank.
Was that a member of your of the cult, or was it one of
No.
the
That was one of the other ones, one of Henslow's.
with Mr. Henslow?
Yeah. And then I got Ramon's knife, and I stabbed him a couple times because I knew he was going to kill me too, and I had to get away. I know it was wrong. I see his face every night, and I can't undo it. So it's best if I just move on, which is what Dr. Keaton says, and Keaton kind of nods.
Acts of self-defense can be just as traumatic to live through. It's understandable.
Yeah, that's it.
I want to see if I can get a picture, because he seems less put together at the moment than Mr. Henslow was, but still cognizant, very cognizant. Just definitely more kind of like trying to bury everything. So I'm with all the information the doctor has, he's going to try to just get a read on Mr. Edgar specifically. Kind of form a profile in his head of like where he's at in terms of stability.
Sure. Why don't you give me a psychoanalysis roll? We'll call that difficulty 4.
Okay.
And so basically you can spend points from your pool if you want.
All right. I get to do the roll. I get to do a roll.
This is our first player roll, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's see. I will spend. I don't think we're going to be talking to too many more people in the sanitarium today.
Probably not.
I'll spend a pool of 3 from my 10.
Okay. All right. So basically, at that point, the roll is unnecessary because you will always get it. Yeah, your impression is that as you say, he's probably got a less stable starting point than Henslow seemed to have. You get the impression that, given the description he gave you about all the drugs and everything, he probably doesn't have the most accurate memory of what happened. But you don't sense that he's like deliberately misstating any of what happened. He seems like he's pretty open about, I got a spell put on me and I stabbed this dude. So it seems like he's describing what happened as best he can tell with his somewhat fragmented memory.
Understood.
Everything's fine.
Great. Mr. Edgar, would it be in your best interest for us to not touch too much specifically more on that night and what you saw?
He kind of looks over at Dr. Keaton and says, well, I mean, I can tell you what I remember, but a lot of it's sort of a manifestation of my internal conflicts, so I don't know how real it is. And Keaton nods like a proud father. You can, and he says, well, Edgar, you can certainly tell them what you remember, just as long as we're clear that these flights of supernatural fancy aren't, they're not real. They're just what your mind is telling you. As long as you remember that, you can certainly tell Dr. Adrian what it seemed like to you at the time. And it
In moments of intense stress, the mind can often lead to hallucinations. So simply think of it as trying to cope with the stress in your mind, if that is alleviating, to think of it not as something you truly saw.
Sure, that makes sense. Why don't you, Dr. Adrian, would you give me or spend me a point of reassurance with that?
Oh, happily.
Excellent. I thought you might.
It's this whole thing.
Yeah. And so he sort of frames himself for a moment, then he says, like I said, Echevarria put the spell on me and said it was going to be a big thing. And right as the thing showed up, the fire started. So we all started running to get out. I mean, I don't know how many of us were running from the fire and how many of us were running from the thing, but we started running out, and then they started shooting. That's when they shot Echevarria with the shotgun, and I tried to stab that guy to get away. Everybody was running in all directions. The place was on fire. There was people shooting. And this thing just started grabbing people, and our people, their people, doesn't matter, whatever was close, just grabbing them and biting them and tearing them apart. And it just, I didn't really get a good look at it. It had mouths, all not like on a face, but just like all over it. And I was just screaming. I couldn't stop. I was just screaming the whole time. And then I stabbed that guy, and I ran away. And I don't know what it was, but it was. And Keaton's kind of leaning forward, and he says, it seemed to me to be it was not what he promised. And for all I know, if it was real, it might still be out there. And I think I think maybe it's watching us.
Perhaps your mind was drawing from how you were interpreting the names of this Golgoroth that you spoke of, and that's why you were able to see something.
That's probably it. Yeah, that's probably it.
And there were probably a level of hallucinogenics within your system at that moment. So perhaps what you were feeling is a sense of paranoia at people who are members of the cult looking for you.
Yeah, maybe that could be it. And Dr. Keaton looks suitably impressed. He's like, yes, this is what I've been trying to tell you, Edgar. Perhaps you'll listen to an expert from out of town.
I don't know how I feel about this doctor. I don't know how I feel about this doctor. You're not malicious. So I don't think that's better.
Yeah, that seems fair. Well, is there anything else you'd like to ask Edgar before we let him go about his day?
I think I'm all done with my questions. I'm not one to pry too far in one moment.
Very good. So Edgar kind of stands up. He looks at you, James. He says, "Thanks for the cigarette." And
I'm gonna give him another one for the road.
Thank you. And he shuffles on out into the common area. Says, well, as you can see, Edgar is very, very troubled, but I think we're making progress. And Dr. Fisher, I appreciate your reinforcement of what I've been telling him. I think it may genuinely help. I'm not sure he'll be at the point where he can ever rejoin society, but I think he's doing better.
Yes, group hallucinations are sometimes indicative of an extremely traumatic event. So
It does sound like it was that to all accounts. Well, is there anything else I can help you with while you're here?
Yeah, I think Dr. Fisher here asked for some medical records on our friend Mr. Job. I assume we've got interview records. You look like somebody who would keep detailed notes.
I certainly do my best. Yes. Yeah, and he brings out a couple folders. You know,
I would
with
also
each
ask for
one's info.
Mr. Fred's as well. He's going
Hey,
to
Carol.
Okay.
Preferably with dental records.
Does he have rabies?
Yeah, so he actually goes to the door and asks one of the nurses to go and bring him those records. And he comes back in and says they'll be along presently. So looking through these, you know, both Adrian and Alice are familiar with how this stuff works. You can see there are, first of all, they've got like a lot of their medical records. They're both on a variety of meds that make them, you know, relaxed and, you know, sometimes groggy and a little subdued. Many of them also have the effect of making memories more vague. It doesn't seem unusual in either the medications or the doses for a facility like this. I would say that you can tell from the notes that Dr. Keaton, there are notes in there that suggest he's thinking about writing a book on these two. And they're what he describes as their richly intertwined delusions and psychoses. So he's you know, clearly got some other plan in mind. There are notes on a couple occasions when they were allowed to interact to see what happens, which Dr. Keaton bills as confrontation therapy. When they're on their medications, it seems like both of them are just sort of vaguely angry with each other and want to end the interaction. When this was tried non-medicated, they both clearly were very angry at one another. At one point, Job actually rushed at Henslow before he was restrained, and he repeatedly said, "You tried to kill me, but I'm still here." And so that was sort of the end of that experiment. Do any of you have accounting?
Sal does.
Sal does.
Yeah. How many different books do you keep, Sal?
Sal can neither confirm nor deny. But yeah, the one thing you notice, because it does have like the billing stuff in the back, which is probably less of interest to you know, to Dr. Fisher and company. But from what you can see, you just kind of take a glance, and it looks like both Mr. Henslow's and Mr. Job's treatment are being billed to the Henslow family.
Interesting. Very interesting. I knew we brought you, Sal, for a reason.
And when he sees you kind of looking at that, he says, "Well, anyway, these are the files. If there's anything else I can help you with, please let me know. I hope you were able to find some of what you were looking for."
Yeah, Doctor, I do. Oh, go ahead.
No, go first.
I was, we appreciate the help, Doc. We likely are going to be back. We've got some more poking around to do. And I have noticed the notes for the book.
Mm-hmm.
Good. And I'm sure, you know, obviously we'll share everything we find. I'm sure it'll make your book that much more interesting.
Well, it might just be a chapter in another book. It's hard to say yet, but yes, I appreciate it.
I think it's
it
important
may
to
help with
account
the
for all of
treatment.
this.
Yes. Dr. Fisher, you were saying?
Oh, I just wanted to be assured. Is this all information they'd already shared with you of their hallucinations? There was no new information given to us?
No, it's been pretty consistent throughout.
Understood. Thank you.
There's a knock at the door, and the nurse hands in another folder, which is Mr. Culver's notes.
As soon as I see the name, I grab it.
Do you know how to read it?
I mean, he recognizes many of the words.
Yeah, and I think that's a great call out, because I grab it and flip through it and very quickly realize that it's way over my head, and
I just kind of reach slowly.
Yeah, I gently hand it over to you.
And I think while that happens, Alice will look towards Dr. Keaton and say, just curious, by way of curiosity, are we the first ones outside of, well, yourself, who have came here to meet with either of these gentlemen to discuss what's going past? Or is this, have any other parties been interested before?
No, like I said, I don't believe that Mr. Job has anyone outside the facility here. And Mr. Henslow, I understand that his mother is homebound, and I don't believe he has any other living family. So you are the first that came by. I know you, during the interviews, you mentioned a Walter Winston. I know that Mr. Henslow was conducting a lot of correspondence. So you're working on his behalf, or his family's behalf, I suppose I should say?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, we have certainly got more than one bottle in the dispensary with the Winston Pharmaceuticals name on it. So I hope whatever you're finding here can be helpful.
Has that family ever left any donations for this establishment, or have they only conducted billing and, of course, issued pharmaceuticals?
I'm sorry, the Winston family? Is that what you were
Yes.
asking about? Yeah. No, there haven't been any particular donations or anything here, and we purchase the medications like anyone else would.
Thank you for your help, Dr. Wolf.
Of course.
Go ahead. We'll see if we can find anything more in these records.
Okay. And so he was like starting to get up, and when you said you were kind of still going to be looking at the records, he sort of sits back down again. You get the impression he doesn't really want to let them out of his sight for too long. Looking at Culver's file, it seems pretty ordinary. I mean, he came in a little over a year ago. He was having some what you would probably recognize as early signs of dementia. He was having difficulty with his memory and not recognizing people that were in his family. And he has been a very calm and easygoing patient. There's no sign in here of anything like the violence that you saw from him.
And Dr. Adrian, as you're going through that, and I realize that you're kind of knee deep in there, I do just, are you seeing any connection to Chicago PD, being arrested in Chicago? Is there any records that in any way connect us?
Doc will Adrian take a look at that, but whenever you mention police, we'll also look for any ties to California, where there is police ties there as well.
No, as far as you can tell, Culver is a Savannah native. Has never done any extensive period. I mean, there's not a lot of personal history here, but there's no sign of him having, traveled extensively. When you start asking about the Chicago and the Chicago Police Department, Keaton quietly jots down a few notes to himself. As I say, that was definitely out of character for Mr. Culver. I'm dreadfully sorry, but we'll certainly talk to him and try and find out what happened there.
You let me know what you find out about why he singled me out
Of
and found
course.
me appetizing.
What's the best way to reach you?
I give him the information for the hotel.
Okay. All right. Very good. Yes, I'll certainly pass along whatever I'm able to learn. Is there anything else I can help you with?
I believe we've taken enough of your time today.
Very well. Then I will, he stands up and kind of reaches out a hand for the folders. And he says, of course, if there's any further assistance I can provide, I'll be happy to help in any way. And he basically escorts you back out through the facility. As you're on your way out, kind of waiting to get through the locked door that leads back out into the civilized world. Alice, you're kind of, glancing around. You have that sort of professional curiosity. Not that mental health is your specialty, but you've certainly got an interest in seeing people's care. And you sort of, just looking over the room and, I don't know, thinking these poor people are there for the grace of God or whatever it might be that's crossing your mind. And you see a little motion in the corner and you look up, and just for a second, there's a section of water stain, like at the top of one of the walls, just a regular like discoloration in the wallpaper. And for just a second there, you would swear that in that discolored patch of wallpaper, there is a mouth moving and whispering something up there. You can't hear it, but you can see the thing moving. And you sort of blink and look again, and it's gone.
Assuming I notice, I turn to you, Alice, and go, everything okay?
Probably getting used to the heat, I think.
I don't know how anybody could get used to this.
For sure.
Well, the jungle in Nicaragua was hotter, but let's get some fresh air and out into the open.
And with that,
Brian, there's been, different occult terms bandied about, the name of the creature and Fisher and all that. Am I familiar with any of that?
None of those names ring a bell with you. Yeah, I wouldn't say any of that, crossed your mind. I mean, it certainly is all consistent with occult. The whole description of the ritual and the circle and the spells and everything all matches the kind of thing but none of the specifics have any connection for you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And with that, you make your way back out into the sunshine and sweltering heat of a Savannah afternoon. And given the time, I think that's probably a good place for us to end session 1.
Beautiful. We're going to cut to credits. For those of you not familiar, we're going to be back on the other side of the credits to talk as players and talk to the GM. So stick around. We'll be right back. We are back, Brian.
All right. Excellent. Well, as is tradition here on Third Floor Wars, we like to wrap each session up with what we call Stars and Wishes. Remind me where this originally came from, Craig. I'm not sure who's...
So I originally heard of it. I don't know if it originated here, and it's a bit of a riff on, what is the other one? Thorns and something. Roses and Thorns. Yeah. And but I originally came across it through Jason Cordova's Gauntlet group, and have fallen in love with it. I think it's just a great way to end every session. I think it's good for the audience, right, to hear these stars and wishes, and I'll let you explain what they are. But even more importantly, for those of you watching, it's a great way, even with your home game, because for a GM and for other players, it's a great way to get an idea of where you are and where you're headed, and what the wants are. If a GM says, hey, how did things go? Players are going to generally say, hey, it went great. Whereas, if you're trying to mine the table a little bit, I think Stars and Wishes can be a great way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great help for the GM as well as the players. So basically, the premise is we ask each player for a star, which is basically a moment or a scene or a line or something that was really one of their favorite moments in the scene. It might be, an action event, a particular line of dialogue, but just one sort of favorite thing that they really enjoyed, whether it's something they did or something someone else did. And then we also ask for a wish, which is from the player's perspective, not the character's perspective. What would they like to see happen next time? Do you want more of this? Do you want less of this? Is there a burning question you want to get answered? And where do we go from there? So because you've done this many times, Craig, I'm going to start with you and let you set the example.
Both of these are easy for me. So the star for me is good luck. So we've got 2 players on the stream that have never played with us before. I've interacted obviously with Chris and Mac before. So they weren't by no means were they complete strangers, but you just never know. You never know what kind of players they'll be and things like that. And man, oh man, we're just bat 1,000 on this channel. Every single time we bring on new people to join us to play, immediately, they become assets. It makes me want to play like 10 more games with them. So my stars, like Naomi, no offense, you don't surprise me. You're a great player. It's why you are in several streams. Brian doesn't surprise me. He's not only GM several streams, but he's been a player in many streams. But Chris and Mac, you guys are my stars just because, like immediately you guys jumped right in, know how we like to play, know how we like to do a lot of RP and get into character. So you guys are my stars. And then wishes, I got to tell you, Brian, knowing that this is a big book campaign, this is not, a 5 episode, one shot type thing, that this is something that we could be playing for well over a year, depending on how things go. I was happy with how much information we got just in the first 2 hours of play. And I wish that continues. I wish that we still get a nice slow drip of information so that, things get deeper and deeper. Sometimes big book campaigns like this can have just huge dry spells where you're not getting more just because this seems stretched out. That didn't happen. So I wish we get more of that.
I will say that this campaign is very well put together and it feeds things out, I think, very well. So assuming I don't screw it up, I think you're in good shape.
Beautiful.
All right, Chris, what can you tell us about your stars and wishes?
My stars was actually the scene that really didn't take place, the off-screen scene of the 3 of us at the bar and, James spending time in his room. Because for me, that really cements, allegiances and things like that within the group. So, James is kind of suspect because he's all quiet and keeps to himself. But I think that kind of, gives an idea of Sal's he's very outgoing and things like that, but he's quiet. He likes to sit back and watch, but he has to know who's got my back. So, and then for my wishes, I like the slow burn of the campaign. Sal is certainly a man of action. His stats portray that, but I think there's going to be many opportunities for that. So
excellent.
Yeah, especially if we get more patience to bite James.
or we finally get to turn him against you. So Mac, this was a very Adrian heavy episode. What are your stars and wishes coming through?
That was a lot. I'm not used to talking this much.
You're doing great.
Awesome. Like I believed you. I don't know how much background you share with Adrian, but it really sounded like Adrian knew what they were talking about.
Mostly just stuff that I've been told because I like being on the spectrum. You kind of, I guess, learning about medical stuff just is a special interest of mine. Just like, yeah, I don't think I would want to be called insane if I was talking about a mass hallucination I was dealing with. I think one of the stars was how easily we kind of shifted between scenes, where kind of just like it was like, okay, we're at the scene, we've met Miss Janet, now we're gonna go to Savannah, now we're in Savannah, now we're gonna go. Like it felt like it made a lot of sense, the flow of it.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of my favorites, just how easy it was to kind of continue with where we were going, not feel like you were kind of stuck or getting lost.
Yeah, I like to let people
Pacing was
play out
good.
conversations that are going on, but I also don't want to just dawdle forever because, as Craig mentioned, this is a big book, so I want to make sure we keep going forward.
Mm-hmm. And for wishes, well, I get just because this was such an Adrian heavy episode, I guess basically I get to shut up more and I get to learn more about the other characters. Because I really love all of them already. And one of my favorite scenes was whenever Alice just took the front seat immediately. Because
Mhm.
it could have been taken for arrogance, but no, it's just we have places to be. We have places to go. Let's just get moving. Which I love.
I think now I've obviously talked with Naomi more about Alice's background. I think she may become one of my favorite characters ever as we see her evolve. So, or get to see more of who she is. And so, last but certainly not least, Naomi, what do you think? Stars and wishes.
Well, I hope this means that I don't get killed off that early. But stars, well, love the old interrogation. I think that just what was earlier mentioned, the questions Adrian was asking, and I think that was key role playing. But I think my star needs to go to rolling a 6 on biting on bite to James. That this patient,
Just out
nearly
of
took a
nowhere.
chunk out of his arm. So
Mhm.
Just like,
I think
hey, look, you'll be fine. Just don't talk to
I-
them. Don't look.
yeah,
Honestly, I was about ready to do it right after you said, "Oh, these people, they're not violent. They're not going to harm you in any way." But I felt like I
If you
needed to
don't
spit it
look
out
at
more.
them.
That was beautiful.
so
That
so
was
I
amazing.
really enjoyed that, and enjoyed it all. And it's a very, very different. I mean, it's the same system, but it's a very different pacing and tone from the other one, from Fear
Mhm.
itself. And I'd say Wishes. Well, I'm on page 5 of my notes, so I'm really looking forward. I'll probably be before we get to our next session. I'm like, okay, we've got California, we've got the parents' house, we've got that. I'm just really looking forward to doing some more investigation, finding stuff out, and given the ending of the this session or hallucination or whatever it is, I feel that we are already attracting attention. So.
Craig, I know you said you were taking some notes on Notion. Maybe we ought to try and find some communal place where everybody can share and combine their notes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And what I have found helpful, Brian, is doing it inside of Foundry. So if
Mhm.
maybe you could create so Foundry, incidentally, we're using Foundry as our VTT for this, which is almost exclusively what we use on Third Floor Wars. They do have, it's a great virtual tabletop. But one nice feature is you can create a journal, make us all owners, and you can actually create pages for each of us, so we can each go in and kind of leave notes, read each other's notes. But I love that idea, and that way it's right at our fingertips.
Sure, and I'll also go ahead and put in the notes so you the names so you guys have the
That'd be
spellings and
great.
everything there because some of them
That'd
are
be
a little
great.
tricky.
Thank you.
Sure thing. One thing I did want to share before I let Craig do his traditional wrap-up material is the people from Pelgrane Press who make Trail of Cthulhu and these products have been super helpful on this. They've actually given a discount code that is going to be good through the end of the year for purchases of the Eternal Lies PDF, the soundtrack, because yes, this campaign comes with its own soundtrack. And also the print product when it's back in print, which is in the process of being right now. So I'm going to put it in the chat here. It's Eternal Stream 10. So if you want to get a copy of this campaign, it's marvelous. This is the third time I've run it, and it's one of my favorites ever. Obviously, you may not want to read all of it yet if you want to avoid spoilers for what's going on. And then, on the other hand, you may want to see and rub your hands in glee as you know what's going to be coming for these poor characters. But I want to thank Pelgrane for that. And
Yeah, appreciate it,
to make use
Pelgrane.
of it.
They've been good to us. We've played several of their games on the channel. It's a good company, and everything they've put out that I've bought, and I bought a lot, is really good.
For sure. All right, Craig, anything we need to do to close out here?
Just real quick, this coming Thursday, we've got another Gumshoe game going. This is a one-on-one game we've been doing of Night's Black Agent with me and one other player. I think some of the best stuff that we've seen on the channel. Night's Black Agents is a very interesting use of the Gumshoe system. It is super spy modern times, but instead of going up against other governments, you are going up against a vampire conspiracy. So something to check out. Brian, thanks, man. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having me, Craig. I'm
All
looking
right.
forward to the long haul.
Follow, like, and all that to keep track of the schedule. Cheers, all.
Thanks, everybody.
Howdy, friends. Thank you for watching. All our content is archived and organized in playlists on the Third Floor Wars YouTube channel. Check it out. And if you could like, follow, subscribe, and even set your notifications to this channel on YouTube and Twitch, we'd appreciate it, and it'll make sure that you catch all of our content. I talk with creators, designers, and experts across the gaming landscape in every episode of our podcast, Tabletop Talk. Open up your favorite podcatcher and search for Tabletop Talk from Third Floor Wars. Support your creators. They make the content you love, and it's your support that makes it happen. If you want to help us, go to Third Floor Wars on patreon.com, and you can help us for as little as $1 a month. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Take care.